Hi, I'm Janelle Karisk. I'm the CEO of the Helix group of companies, and it was my pleasure to sit in on this conversation with Emily Taylor from Helix and Ineke McMahon, our very special guest. For this episode of the podcast, I have inserted myself into the conversation with Emily and moved Michael to the bench. Our guest this week is a woman I respect and admire. She holds opinions which she is not afraid to share, but is equally as willing to listen to the opinion of others. She is empathetic and insightful, fun and fabulous. When I spend time with her, I walk away feeling like I could take on the world. She is unapologetically authentic. She is a master networker. Her career is sprinkled with sparkle, but she has spent her fair share of time shoveling you-know-what, doing the hard yards. It was my absolute pleasure to sit at the Helix kitchen table with my friend Ineke McMahon. I hope the conversation sparks some fire in your belly.
Welcome to episode 3 of our Deconstruction podcast. In this episode, we are switching it up a little bit because my usual co-host, Michael Chesterman, has been graciously bumped for our own Helix Legals, Janelle Karisk. Welcome to the podcast, Janelle.
Thank you so much, Emily.
And welcome to our special guest this week, Ineke McMahon. So welcome, Ineke.
Thank you for having me.
Have you? Before we jump in, I just would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're recording today, which are the Turrbal and Jagera people, and pay our respects to the elders past and present. So, Ineke, would you like to, you're Director of Objective Property Services and Director of Pathway to Promotion. Would you like to give a bit of history on how you got to where you are at the moment and, your background in recruitment?
Sure. When I went to uni, I did a psych and business double, which was really interesting. I loved studying psychology. It was really fun. But then halfway through my career, I realised I probably didn't want to deal with broken people all the time. I just didn't have I worked at family services while I was studying and just was come home in tears like, oh, this is not for me. So upsetting. I'm so grateful that there are people who can do that, but I found it really difficult to put it down.
That's huge insight for the career that you're in now.
I know,
makes a lot
right?
of sense now. I'm putting the dots together.
Yeah. So I thought, well, I actually would rather help people to be better, but that people are already okay at that point, and then take them further. So recruitment seemed like a good fit for me. I started in recruitment at 21. My first recruitment position was with a company called Naylor Business Solutions at the time. They were one of the bigger firms in Brisbane, and they specialised in construction, engineering, building products and electrical. So they had one female recruiter and the rest were all men, and then a couple of female recruiters who did admin. So I was lucky enough to get a job in executive recruitment straight out of the gate. So I think a lot of my female peers started in sort of recruiting admin and then worked up. But I was, day one, get out there and win work, and it's executive, go. So as a 21-year-old, that was pretty daunting.
That's awesome. That must have been really daunting.
It was, and they were a full-on organisation too. They had a rule that you basically they gave you a budget for your first 3 months, and if you didn't meet it, you got fired. So it was pretty stressful.
Talk about sink or swim
and go. So that was a good start for me. So I had to kind of man up really early in my career, and then I did 3 years with them, and then was lucky enough to join Davidson in 2005. So I've been still working with them as well as having my own 2 businesses, and so I've been with them for I think 18 years this year. Yeah, so they were the largest privately owned recruitment business in Australia, and the same thing into the property industry with them initially, which tended to be more senior recruitment, and then executive and boards for the last 15 years. So yeah, really good fun.
Very experienced. And what kind of led you to leave that role after such a long time there?
Well, I still do work with Davidson. So I still work with them a couple of days a week and do sort of, as an example, the last few months I've worked on a listed CEO role for an engineering firm. I placed a CEO for one of the big government departments in state government. I did a CEO for a local government-owned organisation, so I still work with them quite a lot and a bunch of board stuff. And then Objective Property Services does sort of more property-specific development managers, project managers, sort of that sort of stuff. So it's a nice clear delineation of who does what. And then the Path to Promotion we launched in, I think, 2018, and that's about helping people to accelerate their career development as quickly as possible based on the 20 years of learning I've had recruiting people at the top of their game.
Should we kind of go back in time and establish how you know each other, where you first met, and the not shenanigans, but the fun, the fun you get up to together at your power lunch lady lunches?
We met a few years ago, and it turned out it was at a lunch, in fact, with the Bluebird Girls, which are the female-owned property developers in Brisbane, which we love. We're big fans of theirs. And it turned out that we knew everybody that we knew each other, but we hadn't actually met, which was really, really fun. And it just sort of, I think there was 6 or 7 of us at that original lunch, wasn't it? Where Absolutely. It was like, we all own businesses.
I think we're all actually going to separate lunches, and I think it was Sarah had said, oh, well, let's match these two up together, get all these girls together, Well, it was brilliant because we're all in the property industry in some way, but then you've got PR and legal and career and recruitment, development, and I think we had someone there Carly was there with a marketing sales background. So we were all business owners at that first lunch, all sort of in the same industry, and it was about kind of helping each other and talking about what we could be doing better, etc. But now we just really just drink. A bit of networking.
Bit of networking. Yeah, but we all do really help each other and pass leads to each other and all of that stuff as well, so it's good.
Yeah, that's nice that it's also kind of in an informal way, with less pressure of maybe going to a networking, proper networking event.
I think it's the authenticity of that group of people that's really drawn me into it. From the very first kind of lunch that we had, just feeling quite relaxed around everybody and everybody being there for some fun as well. I think there's so many things that we do in our lives, like as mothers and as business owners, that means that sometimes the grind can get a bit difficult. And so actually when these lunches come around and it's time to go and meet up with the girls, it's the one thing that's non-negotiable for me, that I'm definitely going to that with all the things, all the directions that you get pulled in. Actually, it's something that I really look forward to, and I take a lot of energy and motivation and inspiration from to kind of keep going. Every time I go, there's a conversation that makes me feel better about whatever I might be going through. Or, I think at Christmas time, I was getting right up to the end of the year and I was seriously limping with like one leg dragging behind me and my arm blown off trying to get to the finish line. And I really probably should have stayed home from lunch because I was a bit stressed leading to the finish line. And I just walked away from lunch feeling really invigorated again and thinking, you're nearly there. The end is nearly here for the year. You can do this. And it was, the chats that I had with the girls at lunch that really helped me to get across the line at the end of the year. But I think if there is a group of people, including Ineke, who are the people personified for what the opposite of cliches are, it's that group of women and how authentically they are themselves and support each other. And I think that's really important for people like you, Em, that are up and coming in the industry, to really understand and appreciate that you don't need to change who you are in order to be successful. Ineke is wildly successful, and she is one of the most authentic people that I've ever come across. The approach that she has the way that she supports the women around her. There's in her career, there's women that I know that she's helped into careers that fought against her, saying,
that's true.
Saying,
I'm not ready. I'm not ready for this role.
I'm not going
yes, you are.
I'm not going to apply for that. Yeah.
Shut up and give me a resume. Yeah.
And then I've had the honor of seeing the benefit of that. So if Innie hadn't have pushed that person forward, they wouldn't have the career that they have in the role that they have right now. And also being in that position, being able to offer then opportunities to others, and then also being able to listen to the way that woman is regarded in the business that she now works in, that she's the change that they were hoping and praying for. And to think that without Ineke's encouragement, that woman wouldn't have even have ended up in that role. I just think that's a tremendous knock-on effect for being the change. So, Ineke's living and breathing, being the change in her role, that then gives another woman an opportunity that then has a knock-on effect of, effectively being the change in a large organisation and being the change in engaging with other female-led businesses and giving businesses that are majority owned by women the opportunity to step forward. And I think every time I go and spend time with these girls, I think, oh my God, I just need, one of them is on my PR team, but I need all of them on my PR team, where it's like, oh my God, I sound pretty good. Like, is that true? Did I really do that? So yeah, absolutely amazing. I'm really grateful for the friendships that I've established, and I'd encourage, all the women out there to stick your neck out and go to the lunch and meet the new people. I know it gets harder as you get older to meet new people and feel safe with new people, but it's definitely, for me, worth the effort. And they're some of the girls that I regard very highly as friends now, and very much respect and admire the careers that they have.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues that hold women back at all levels, it's confidence. You just need somebody in your tribe sometimes to say, you can do this. You have the skills, you have the ability, we believe in you, go. And just that little extra push to help you do something that you probably wouldn't do on your own. And Janelle was talking earlier about women that I've helped get into careers. I've been recruiting for over 20 years now, and mostly at the senior level. And if you look at sort of the statistics of women in leadership, it's typically about 14% of women in leadership positions and ELTs in the big companies. But I committed to doing diverse shortlists over 10 years ago and started measuring my placements, how many male and how many female. Actually, I did it for a NAWIC thing a couple of years ago. And for the last 4 years, I'm at 58% of my placements are female.
Wow.
So if you can convince a good woman to get on a shortlist, more than likely she can get the job. But most of the time I do have to push people to I say to joke, I bully people to give me their resumes. But sometimes they just need that support of, you can do it, you're ready. And I would never push anyone to do something that I didn't think they were ready to do. But yeah, and every single one of those women is still in their jobs and succeeding and doing fantastically. Not one hasn't worked out.
Really? Wow. I saw that in one of your articles or the previous interviews you did, I think it's kind of goes without saying, I've seen it at uni and in the past, like men will go for a role if they meet only 60% of the criteria, but women think they need to meet a whole lot more to even go for that job. And I was also blown away, and I'm not sure if this is still the case, but in an interview you did a couple of years ago, you said that in your whole career, you hadn't ever received a call from a woman scoping out the salary and seeing their worth. Does
that's
that
not
still
true
stand?
now, thankfully. That changed in 2020. So it's the last 3 years that's been different. But up until 2020, I used to get calls every day from men who would say, look, I've seen that you're advertising this role. I'm not actively on the market. I'm just wanting to know what the salary range is, because I've got my salary review coming up in, June, July, whatever. And I'm just trying to gather some market data to get an understanding of what I should be asking for. And in in almost 20 years, one call a day, not a single call was from a female. So I've been spruiking that pretty loudly.
Yeah.
And thankfully I got my first call in 2020 from a woman doing that, and now I get them all the time, which is great.
That's good.
Yeah. And most of them say, you told me to do this. I saw you at an event and you said that I should phone, and so I am. And even if I don't have the data, then I can point them in a direction where they can get that data. But yeah, that's me being a bit harsh and saying sometimes the pay parity gap, we've got to take some responsibility for that and be the ones to step up and ask and make sure we're being paid what we're worth.
And maybe it was just, the extra convincing of, you can actually do this. People are doing this.
Yes.
Call me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's very true.
Yeah, that's funny. It's even kind of, I think it's at all ages too, the girls and women underselling themselves. And I mean, I just remember walking out of exams and all the boys would go, yes, killed that, crushed that. And the girls would go, oh, I don't know. Yeah. Really.
And then the girls get high distinctions and the guys get credits. Yeah. No.
You just need to pack on wear your confidence backpack that true. Day and back yourself.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That is true. It is a female trait to that itself. But with the 80%, 80% of the skills, 60% of the skills thing, the message I'd love to get females to understand is if you had 90% of the skills for a job that you applied for, you'd pretty much only go up 10% every year, which means you'd think about the first job you had when you first left uni. Do you want to be doing that 20 years from now? No, you have to. There has to be times in your careers where you have to take a big step. You've got to go from managing no people to managing some people. You've got to take the step of managing 10 people to 20 people if that's the career path that you want. You have to push yourself out of your comfort zone, and that's something that men typically feel more comfortable doing than women.
In our chat before recording, you were talking about how it's really important for each of us to bear the responsibility of upskilling ourselves and working harder in our roles and making sure that we're going out and doing these tasks that we can, put down on our resume as having done, and kind of taking charge of that and being accountable. And I thought that was really important as well, because maybe sometimes you could sit back and go, oh, well, why am I not doing that, when maybe you could ask if you're not, yes, that's true. If you feel like you need to be more challenged.
Yeah, you have to take responsibility for your own development. That's the golden key to being successful. And having interviewed people at the top of their game for 20 years, I say I'm really lucky. My career is one of the best. Well, for me, it's one of the best and most fun careers I could have possibly chosen, because every single time I take a brief, I might be sitting in front of a board, or I might be sitting in front of a CEO, and they tell me all about their business, all about their challenges, what's happening in the market, what their competitors are doing, what's happening in their leadership team, why this particular role is so important to their organisation. So I get this kind of like mini, lecture on the company and this market and what's going on and so on. So there's a whole lot of learning that happens there. And then I get to interview the 10 people who are best at that thing in that particular industry or market, and what decision they made and why they did it and how they got into a leadership role and how they turned that company around. And so I'm just constantly learning from people who are really, really fantastic at what they do. And the thing that's consistent, there's a few personality traits that are absolutely consistent with people who get to the top quickly. And one of them is they take responsibility for their own development. They don't say things like, oh, I haven't been trained in this, or the company hasn't done this for me. They take responsibility for their own learning. And it's things like, you know what, if you don't understand finance and you don't understand the P&L, or you don't understand, go and sit with the CFO and say, please explain this to me. Don't go, I want to be sent on a training course about finance and the company should pay for that. Just take responsibility for yourself. And that's the golden key to having a really successful career and accelerating your skills as quickly as possible, is saying, I want to get here and I'm here. What are the skills I need to get here? And then take responsibility yourself for finding a pathway to getting to that.
And maybe that's writing it down and putting it down and putting those steps down on paper about what you do. I think sometimes maybe that's also kind of comes back to confidence again. If you want to go and ask for those things, buckling up the confidence to go and ask.
So in the GFC, when it was really difficult to get jobs, I was giving advice to people to do stuff for free. And this one kid came up to me afterwards, after this event that I'd spoken at, and said, I really want to get into development. What should I do? And I suggested that he contact some developers. He was from the Sunshine Coast. Contact the developers that work in your area and say, if you're looking at a site, can you let me know? I will do you a feasibility for free because I've just graduated from uni. I know it's hard to get a job. I really want to learn. I probably won't get it all right, but I'll do the grunt work for you. And then, you can pick it up from there. And there were a few developers that went, yeah, all right, mate, give you a shot. So they'd flick him a site and he'd stay up all night. That night, like he'd get an email at 5 o'clock that afternoon and he'd stay up till 6 o'clock in the morning so that when that guy got in the next morning, or woman, whoever it was, got in the next morning, here is this feasibility from this person in their inbox, all Excel spreadsheeted out with all of the various assumptions and all of that sort of stuff. It only took him 3 months of doing that and he had a job and was one of the few who got an assistant development management job during the time when nobody was hiring ADMs. And he's now in a pretty senior role at an organisation in Brisbane. But that's the sort of stuff where, if you're in an organisation, as an example, and you were saying, okay, I want to get better at finance, I'd go to your finance manager and say, next time you've got to do a report, do you want to give it to me and I'll have a crack at it? I might not get it right, but I'll take some of your work off you, make your life easier, and then that way I'm learning and you're having to do less work. So sometimes it's about giving to get, and it's the stuff that you should do that stuff outside of your work hours. You don't sit at your desk and do someone else's work. You take it home, you do it, you bring it back for that person, and then that's the way you start to differentiate yourself from your peers.
And it's not like, say that example of that boy who did that, he's not going to do it forever.
No.
But it's just a point of difference until you get that learning, and then they go, hang on a second.
Yeah, this person's doing it over and above. Yeah.
Come over and do it for us as a job role.
Yeah, exactly right. I've had lots of people that have sat in front of me during my career and said, I'm, doing residential development. I really want to do commercial development as an example. But doesn't your company do commercial development? Yeah, but I don't know if there's an opening in that team. Go over there and find someone in that team and say, what are you working on? Can I do some of your stuff? That's the sort of stuff you've got. Like, why would you go and look for a job somewhere else when you've got that capability within your own organisation and you can just take responsibility for it? Just get in there, do it. Come on. It's not that hard.
I noticed across your career that you've done a lot of volunteering as well. So you'll get in there, roll up your sleeves and get engaged, whether it's with the property industry or diversity in the industry, and you're not afraid to stand up and make your opinion count. And I think too, one of the things that I really admire about you is you're willing to have an opinion, but you're also willing to listen to others' opinions. So, we've got this idea that a leader is someone who everybody listens to, which I think it is important for a leader to have a voice. But I think to be a leader, it's also important that you listen to others. And I think that's something that you do very well, and that in all of the volunteering that you do, you always seem to have an ear for what's going on in the industry and be quite connected with people and ideas that are happening. Can you tell us a bit about what motivates you to do that? Because people talk about, how do you have the time to be able to do that? I think a lot of it comes back to your why and what drives you. And so you kind of find time in your life for the things that inspire you or make some kind of contribution to the why that you have? Yeah,
I think so. I think I'm naturally a serving person. I've got a personality trait that is naturally a server. So, even early in my recruitment career, even though I was, okay, got to build this business and get clients and make placements and so on, I really wanted to know what I was doing and the industries that I was recruiting in, and I wanted to understand them. So, I'd go to functions, and then Property Council is a perfect example. I've been working with them for, 15 or 16 years, might be more now. And the first few events that I went to, I really want to get involved and I really want to help. And at that time, I think it was like 2004 or 5. So they were like, okay, can you come and stuff envelopes? So I'd be there at, 5. I'd go there after work at sort of 6 o'clock at night and just stuff envelopes for them for an hour. It's just about sort of giving back to the industry. And then it was, it's really difficult to get on a property council committee. But once that started to happen, well, hang on, that girl, she goes over and above, and she's young, but she's she wants to help out and she wants to be involved. And so I was really lucky to be one of the inaugural committee members for the diversity committee for the PCA. But I think if you want to be a leader, you have to understand how to serve. And that's something that I really try to impress on young people is you have to take a serving mindset of how can I help others? How can I help others? Because once you get into a role of leadership, you've got to manage budgets and tasks and all of that sort of stuff, but 90% of your role is actually about people. And if you don't understand how to serve, you're not going to be a good leader. And I think that point that you made before is really, really good, Janelle. I think a lot of people think, I've got to be strong if I'm going to be a leader and have a voice and, charge off and be the general. But actually leadership in this environment, it's about serving. It's not about being the boss. It's not about being the dictator. It's not about telling people what to do. It's about helping people in their journey to be the best that they can be.
Have you seen a shift in the way that organisations recruit now as well? So, you've talked about how you have endeavoured to inspire women into, putting their name forward to positions. You've been in the game a long time now. Is there any observations that you have around how the approach of organisations have changed? And do you think with all the chat at the moment about a looming recession and all that kind of stuff being back on the table for discussion, that there's will be a shift in the way that organisations approach their people?
I think so. It's been an employee market for a really long time now. The candidates have been the ones with the power and been asking for more and more and more. I want flexibility and I want this and I want that, and companies are like, sure, whatever, because they're trying to build their workforce. I truly wish I could say that in the last 10 years that I get more female applicants and women are getting more confident putting their names forward, but that's not true. I still get, for most of my jobs, like 97, 98% of my applications are men. And then my job is about ringing everyone in the industry and saying, I've got this job, what females do you know that would be good for it? And then approaching them and then convincing them to get on the shortlist. That's still most of what I do. When it comes to the female piece, I don't get a lot of female applicants typically for the technical stuff. For CEO roles, yes, but for technical roles, I still do have to really look for good females and convince them that it's a good idea to look at that opportunity. So I wish that was changing, but it's not. I do think that in this market now, you've got to be very careful about the salaries that you're asking for. I'm giving advice now to some candidates that I've known a long time. I'm being offered this really big salary. Okay, just be careful because market's about to turn, market's about to slow down. You don't want to be the last one on with a huge salary. You will be the first person made redundant. And I saw that in 2008. And this feels very 2007-ish to me. In 2008, there were people taking huge jumps in salary, like 20, 30K up rises to go from one job to another. And all of those people were made redundant when the market really hit the skids. So you just have to make sure that, yes, whilst it's important to be confident and strong and ask for what you're worth and all of that sort of stuff, you don't want to oversell yourself either or put yourself in a position where you're going to be the first person to go.
And that kind of came into how you were saying about yourself, the development of your skills. And if you don't perhaps have the skills to meet that salary if things go sour, then they'll see that.
That's right.
Yeah.
If you've got a bunch of project managers and one's on 180 and the rest are on 150, but they're all managing same size projects, which one are you going to get rid of? You're going to get rid of the $180,000 person straight away, right? In order to make yourself unredundantable it's not a word, but it's funny. You have to be able to not just do your job, but be the person that could take capacity in other areas as well. And that's why I think at the Path to Promotion, we really highlight that you've got to diversify your skills as much as possible. Don't just stick in your lane and this is all I'm good at and I'm just going to do this. You need to be able to be challenging yourself and pushing yourself and learning more skills so that when you look at an org chart and say which of these people we can get rid of, it's not this one. This one says yes. Now, what was the question? When they're asked to do something, it's the person who's always putting their hand up to stay back or go the extra mile, help another team member. People get their job on their technical skills usually, but people get promoted and people get their career accelerates because of their people skills. So it's investing in the soft stuff as well as the hard stuff. Females in particular tend not to focus on finance. You have to understand that. If you want to move up in your career, if you want to be an executive in any space, you have to understand money. You have to understand a P&L. So investing in that stuff early in your career is really important. So you want to understand why your leaders are making the decisions they're making, understand what the commercial drivers are in the business that you work in.
And so path to promotion, why did you decide to start Path to Promotion, and what kind of services do you offer?
That's a really good question. So having been an executive recruiter for a really long time, one of my very good friends, Amber Renee, she is one of the best e-course developers in the country. She's got the most fascinating career. She's a very strange cat. She started as a civil engineer, and then she went into fashion, and then she ended up being a presenter on TV, like just this career that just goes woo, woo, woo.
I love that.
Like just crazy. Yeah. And then, she's got a really good story actually. In the GFC, she was a fashion editor for 2 magazines. She was the female presenter for for fashion TV in Australia. She had like 6 or 7 jobs, and I think she lost 7 out of the 8 of them on one day. In one day, when the GFC hit, she was fired from 7 of her 8 roles. So you used her engineering skills to start writing courses, and now she's amazing. So she'd been saying to me for years, we should do something career-y, it'd be good to get your skills into young people. And honestly, the Path to Promotion is more of a passion project than I care more about it from a passion perspective than the commercial aspect of it, because I really, really want the message of, hey, I understand what success looks like because I've interviewed really successful people for 20 years, and there's about 6 or 7 things that are consistent that if you follow this blueprint, you will get there. And so the first course that we developed was all about that. It was called Success Accelerator. So it was teaching people the tools of, you want to get ahead and you want to get ahead faster, do this. Step 1, step 2, step 3, steps 4, step 5, step 6. Follow these 6 steps and your career will go ahead. And in the first 12 months of launching Path, it was unbelievable. We had a mix of male and female. Actually, we had more males than females join initially, which I found quite hilarious. But it just also tells me that men are more prepared to invest in their own self-development often. And almost everyone in our first cohort got a promotion or a pay rise in the first 6 months of joining the course. So that was pretty cool. And then we've developed a whole bunch of other courses since then. So we teach people how to recruit better talent. That's something I'm pretty good at. So I've had a lot of HR managers and so on buy that course, which is fun. And then we've got some smaller ones on personal branding and stuff like that as well. So, yeah, it's good fun.
What kinds of people do you find sign up? Are they people experienced looking for executive positions, or
from the beginning to the end?
Oh,
yeah.
so
in our first cohort, we had 2 CEOs that were looking to get onto boards, and we had 2 people in their first year of work. So we had a first-year lawyer, we had someone who just graduated from property economics, and they were all in the first group, and they all got good things out of it. So it's not sort of specified at a particular level. And honestly, the skills that we teach, it work at every level. As an example, one of the CEO candidates, so one of the modules is around taking responsibility for your own development stuff that we were talking about earlier. So it's about looking at yourself and saying, okay, here's where I am and here's where I want to be. What are the skills gaps that I have? And then putting in place a structure on how to develop those skills to get you to there. And one of those things is about sitting down with your hiring manager and taking responsibility for your own performance management. So that's one thing a lot of companies do really poorly. I'll often have CEOs say to me, my most important asset is my people. I'm like, okay, great. What's your succession plan look like? Show me what your position descriptions look like. What career plans have you got in place for your top 10 performers? And it's, what? None of that stuff's actually happening. So if you want to be a top performer, what you have to do is take responsibility for that yourself. So rather than waiting 12 months to sit in a room with your manager, and it's usually an arbitrary conversation of like, how have I been going for the last 12 months? You should be having these conversations if not every month, every week. And that is sitting down with your manager and saying, what does success look like for me in the next 12 months? 3 months, what do you want me to have delivered? 6 months, what do you want me to have delivered? 12 months, what do you want me to have delivered? And then what's the priority orders of that? And then it helps you to structure your day, and it helps you to understand what to prioritise. I think what a lot of people do is they work really hard, but they're not necessarily delivering things that the person who's responsible for their promotion actually cares about. So, I've been doing all this stuff, but I don't care about that. I want you to deliver this. So if you don't understand what success looks like in the mind of your hiring manager, then what are you doing? So that's really important. And then, but then what would happen is the CEOs, when they did that module, they'd go, oh my God, I don't have clear goals for the people underneath me either. Holy hell, I need to do success profiles for the people underneath me. And so they changed the way that they led. So yes, it works for a junior person on how to manage it up, but then the senior people look at it and go, oh, I could get so much better at this, and let me use that in my leadership strategy. So I think success profiles is one of our most powerful modules. But
we try to integrate it with life as well. So when we look at goal setting as a business, and then we have like a goal setting meeting with each of the staff, and we kind of look at more holistically, what are your goals? Because flexibility is a big part of what we live at Helix. And I think that if you've got a goal that you want to, participate in a marathon, a triathlon, which means that you want to go training at 4:00 in the afternoon, I've got no issue with that. Like, as long as we understand what each other's goals are, I think we can really help each other and respect the investment that each other are making into achieving those goals, whether they're career goals or life goals. I also think that life goals help you with so much motivation internally, within your business career as well. So, setting the goal to go and do a triathlon might not have anything to do with being in the role that I'm in, but the motivation to go and do it, like the determination, the regularity in the habits that you form to be able to go and do it. Even like you were saying to me, getting up and going for a walk and having that habit of taking all the phone calls that I'm sure consume your life.
Yeah, that's right.
And forming that habit in your life makes such a big difference. And that's not a career goal to go for a walk every day, but it can make a huge difference to what you're able to achieve in a day career-wise.
I read a book really early in my career that was called The Corporate Athlete, and it was about success in your career, attacking it as if you would if you were a sports person.
Yeah, right.
And part of that is actually looking after the temple. So if you want to be successful, and you see it a lot of the time, if you look around at people that are in really senior roles and the people you respect, they're usually fit, they usually got a good family life, and their career's on track. Those three pieces sort of come together. And so I think prioritizing all of those things help you be better in your career. If you don't have one of those pieces in place, it's very difficult to be successful. And so looking after yourself physically is part of being successful in your career as well, because you sleep better, your mind's more, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, the one that people most don't do is sharpen the saw. They run themselves into the ground and they work a million hours, but they don't take care of themselves, and then you're not being efficient. You can sit at that, stare at your screen and be like, oh, I'm so tired. Like, you're not actually being effective at this place. Go out and have a walk, go to sleep, start again in the morning.
Yeah.
I think that's something a lot of people don't do well enough. And I love seeing in resumes, even early, I don't do a lot of junior recruitment, but sometimes I get asked to help with graduate type programs, setting what should we be looking for in young people. And you want to see stuff like they were on a sports team, they were on a committee, they were doing the over and above things. So it is a holistic piece that you need to look at to see whether someone's going to be successful or not. And I think in this environment where, you're right, Janelle, flexibility is really important to most people. So if you are working from home, having those conversations with your manager where you know exactly what you need to deliver and the timeframes you need to deliver it in are more important in this post-COVID environment than they ever were before, because you can get lost in going down a rabbit hole somewhere, and if you've just got that document somewhere where you can see it, what am I doing? Like, this is my priorities, that's what the thing that I have to deliver, and that's what I need to focus on. This other stuff can disappear.
I think maintaining a high level of communication is important in the world where you have flexibility as well. I don't think flexibility can really work unless you maintain that level of communication. The equivalent of being able to walk past someone's office, knock on the door and say, hey, I got this phone call, what do you reckon about this? And having that conversation is such an important learning part of a person's career. So I think that is achievable online. So, so much now of the way that we live and the way that relationships are born is out of a digital environment. You look at the way that people use apps to start relationships, or, Instagram. I've made friends that, the initial discussion has been in Instagram, other women running law firms, connections that have been important to my career development, where my original spark of conversation with them is on Instagram. Yes, it turns into a real life thing at some point, but that initiation is over a digital environment. I think the next generation is even more comfortable initiating and having relationships in digital environments as well as physical environments. So I think that it is possible to still maintain that level of education and communication in a digital environment when you balance it with time, flexibility, and time face-to-face as well. I think that everybody gets so much out of spending time together and interacting with each other that it still plays a very important role in business, being able to have people actually physically come together and collaborate. But I don't think it's the be-all and end-all. And I think there's many toxic, not so great environments where people do come into the office every day and, don't necessarily have that level of communication and don't have that level of interaction. So I don't think everyone sitting at their desk is the golden ticket either. But I think moving forward, if you can find that
perfect balance. I was really worried during COVID about the younger cohort, because I look back at the beginning of my career, that sort of 18 to 25 time frame where you're really setting yourself up for success for later. And the amount of learning that I did through osmosis of just going, what was that? You hear someone on the phone and having a conversation. Can you explain to me what was going on there? I just don't think I would have accelerated as quickly if I was working from home the whole time. The amount of learning you do and seeing how people interact with each other and all of that sort of stuff is really important. So I think a mix is really, really essential. Unless you're a person who said, your job's 90% spreadsheeting, so you may as well do it wherever. If you can do a mix of being around people that are more senior than you, I highly recommend that.
I found too, getting out of my comfort zone when I was younger and going attending things. So I was pretty heavily involved with National Association of Women in Construction back in the day and was going to events all the time. And, some of those really strong relationships that I made with women back then are people that are referring me work now and that have helped to really champion and drive the business forward, which I've been so grateful for. But that ability to spend time with other women in particular, because back when I was on my path to promotion or trying to be made partner, there was no other women in that role in my office that I could look up to and know how it would even
just smash
work
that yourself.
And so meeting women in other industries and understanding how they did it and trying to kind of navigate that was a really important part of my development. I think even being able to hold your own voice in a room and stand there and talk to people, if you do want to go into a career where you need to bring in work or, where relationships are part of it.
That's every career. So many people say, I don't need to know how to do that. I'm an architect. Yeah, well, where are you going to get your work from? Or I'm an engineer. I don't need to know how to do that. Yeah, you do. If you want to move up the career ladder into any leadership role, you need to be able to build relationships outside of your organisation. It's absolutely essential. If you look at law firm, particularly in consulting, any consulting firm, so lawyers, architects, engineers, town planners, economic analysts, you name it. If you don't bring in work, you will not be in a director role. That's just fact. Mm-hmm. And so developing the skills to be able to network and talk to people is really, really important in almost every industry, not just ours, not just property. I've had a lot of people over the years ask me for advice on how to network and you're always at the events and you know everybody and da-da-da-da. My first few years of networking, I would be so nervous. There were times where I actually threw up on days when I had to go to networking events because I was so nervous, and particularly because I was quite young, and at the time it was very male-dominated. It'd be like the sea of black suits. And then myself and I remember that it was like a couple of years there where I was going to PCA events and it would be just myself and this fabulous woman, Raina Sinnathamby, who is a huge I just look up to her so much. She's amazing. She's the managing director of Springfield City Group, and she's a very powerful woman who holds herself beautifully, and she's calm and quiet, and it would just be the two of us at events for years. And I really look up to her, and I learned a lot from her. But pushing yourself out of your comfort zone to do that stuff is really important in every industry, in every space.
Mm. Yeah, practicing in-person communication skills when everything is so online is
nerve-wracking. Yeah,
I find that
that's what will set you apart, though, and your cohort is because there's so many people that are so nervous by that would rather die than host a podcast. You know? So
I'm really impressed with you.
Oh, it is a little bit out of my comfort zone, but Michael said, let's. I don't want to
go,
say
Birdie, fly.
Maybe he. I probably got told I was doing it so much as asked, but I jump on the train. Yeah,
Michael's got a little bit of good in him in the in that he's like, well, Emily probably wouldn't have the confidence to just start a podcast on her own, so I'm going to start it.
And I know we've been talking. I know we've been talking a lot about women in this podcast, but men are so important, and there are so many amazing men to learn from. A lot of in my first probably 10 years of my career, 99.9% of my mentors were male. They were fabulous. You know, I learned so much from them and got a lot of confidence from watching what they did and how they did it and all of that sort of stuff. And I think it's really important to build networks on. Yes, we've got this great group of women that we catch up with, and it's fantastic. But far out, there's some amazing men in our sector. Amazing.
I think it's really important as well, and to if you don't have people who you're working for who are willing to share their time and be your mentors, then trying to seek that out, because I probably have I'm on the scale, I'm 1,000% mentored, and the energy at Helix is really about helping the young people and bringing you along to everything and taking a time to explain. And when you're at home, about the communication, no one's scary or will brush you off if you try and call them. Everyone's always
that's lucky.
So
though.
Important.
Not all organizations are like that.
I think that, you know, the flexibility, like you were saying, when it comes after COVID and people are working from home, I feel for young people who maybe were a bit scared, or people who couldn't answer those questions or felt like they couldn't reach out to those people, and then being in the office is probably better for them. But just getting somebody, at least one person who will help you and share you and explain things to you, it is just so key.
You will learn far much from another human than you will from a book. I mean, I definitely invest in and have always invested in reading and learning and doing all of that sort of stuff. It's really, really important. But in all honesty, like if you want to understand a P&L, going and sitting with a finance person who's done that for 20 years and getting them to explain it to you, you're going to get it a hell of a lot faster than buying a book on accounting.
I think too, listening to other people's stories of what's happened to them. Yeah. So like as a business owner, when someone says, oh, I made this mistake and this is what happened, don't do that. I'm like, okay, good.
Yeah, totally.
So hearing other people's experiences and listening to their stories gives a lot of insight and lessons for what you need to do as well. So getting out there and networking and talking to people gives you the opportunity to hear their stories. You're in a fabulous position that you would hear so many stories about people's careers and what they've done. And yeah, you should write a book, mate.
What not to do.
You should start your own podcast series.
What not to do. There's more what not to do than what to do's. Look, I think a lot of the younger generation now sort of have this like, oh, I want to be a business owner, I want to be a boss, I want this, I want that. The first few years of starting a business is really hard and really lonely. And so that's why it is important to have a network of people who are either ahead of you or on the same journey where you can share your learnings.
I think some of it is you have to get really good at your trade as well in order to get there. You know, if you skip the step where you learn your trade and you just go straight into trying to be the boss, it just doesn't work. So I spent many hours in a small box with no windows learning my trade. And although, you know, probably not the greatest way to spend your 20s, it's really set me up to be able to be in the position I am today. If I hadn't have logged those hours getting the brain between my ears that I have, I never would be able to train people or to do the things that I do. So don't be in too much of a hurry. Yeah, learn your trade as well and learn from the people around you and get good at whatever it is.
And work hard. That's the main thing. It's you've got to work hard. And I'm sorry to say this, and it's an unpopular view, but I am sometimes a devil's advocate. It's more important for women, young women, to work really, really hard and work longer hours and more and go above and beyond. Because if you want to have a family, I have so many people go, oh, how do you do it? How do you have businesses and kids and this and that and everything else? The answer is I slogged my guts out for a long time, to the point where when you do have that first child, the company goes, do whatever you want, come back whenever you want, it'll all be fine. But you have to build the brand of being reliable, of being punctual, of being on time, of delivering everything that you say you're going to deliver. All of that sort of stuff has to be, if you want to have the flexibility later. So I talk about it as investing in your future family. When you're young and you've got all the energy, why wouldn't you be working 60, 80 hours a week? Why wouldn't you? You should be, so that you can, in your 30s and 40s, balance.
Yeah. I think there's some work to be done within organisations about changing the infrastructure so that potentially that isn't the case, that, you don't have to work that hard. But I think there is still a reality that we face every day.
But it might not be that you're working hard that many hours on your job. It might be that you do your 40 hours on your job, but then you should be doing committees. You should be going to networking events. You should be reading books. You should be going to doing extra courses. You should be investing in yourself. So the work, when I say you should be doing 60 hours a week, work on yourself.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be, oh my God, I'm doing 3 people's jobs and I'm running myself into ground. It's a nightmare. But you've got the energy. Invest in yourself, do your job, and then what else? What else can I be doing? Who else can I be learning from? Feed me. You've got to be hungry. You've got to be hungry for knowledge.
Yeah, I agree. And as a business owner, that's the kind of people that I want in the organisation, people that are hungry.
Yep, hungry to learn, hungry to do stuff. I was really lucky when I joined Davidson in, I think it was 2005, there were 2 brothers that ran the business at that time, and one of them said to me, he's a really heavy personal development guy, and he said, do you like reading? And I said, yeah. And he said, how much do you read? I said, I read at least a book a week. And he was like, really? And then he started giving me business books every 4 days, like read this one, now read this one, now read this one. And so I'm, building a desk, and I'm so tired. And 6 months in, I said to the other brother, he said, how are you going? I said, yeah, really well. I'm billing well and got good clients and so on, but the workload's really, really heavy, and with the books, it's a lot. And he went, what books? And I said, oh, Rob's giving me a book to read every 4 days. He went, well, tell him to stop. And I was like, I'm allowed to do that? He said, yeah. I said, 1 a month, Rob, 1 a month. You're giving 1 a month now. That's it. Because I used to read fiction books. I wasn't reading so now I'm like, oh. But still to this day, it's 17 years later, he still gives me every month. He gives me the best book he's read that month.
Oh, that's so nice.
It's brilliant. So, and some of my favourite books that I've ever read have come from Rob. The Happiness Advantage. I love him. The Happiness Advantage is one of the best books I've ever read. What was that one? The one by Chris Voss, which was negotiating something about don't go to the middle or whatever. But yeah, it's just, and stuff that have changed my course a number of times. There's been books that I've read that have completely changed the way that I do things.
And those books challenge the way that you think right now. It's good to get a perspective that challenges maybe how you think. I've been really into those kind of, I don't want to class them as self-help, but
no, they're business books. And they're written by people who are successful. Why wouldn't you read Screw the Rules by Screw Turner? He built Flight Centre. Of course you should read that book. Why wouldn't you read The Happiness Advantage by Sean Acor, who's a psychology professor at Harvard, on how to be successful in business? Why wouldn't you read that? So I think you've got to invest in, and there's so many great TED Talks. There's so much stuff that there's so much information in this time that you can access and learn from. If you've got spare time and you don't have kids, and why wouldn't you be investing in your self-development? I think it's so important.
I think one of the kind of biggest messages I've got out of one of those books lately was they went and talked to some of the CEOs and the biggest companies in the world about imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Oh.
And I was telling Nellie the other day, like they said, okay, well, how do you get over this? And they said, well, you don't. The higher up that I've gone in my position, the worse it has gotten. But if you're clever and you keep going forward, you just learn how to manage it and put it back on the shelf.
It's true. It's amazing. I think that there's a perception that people, once they're at the CEO level or once they're on a board, that they know everything and they know what they're doing, and they're just like us. They're just the same. They have the same insecurities. They've just learnt to manage it, more mask it, perhaps a little bit better. One of the things that very early in my career, when I was in my first recruitment job, we did a lot of sort of sales management recruitment. So people who are in sales careers. So I did a lot of investment in learning about that. And one of the things we used to do was a psychometric test that was particularly around sales capability. And there was one, so it was all the things that hold you back from being a good salesperson, basically. And there was one score that used to come up all the time with people, and it's called social self-consciousness. So that's, I'm okay to talk to someone on my level, but if the CEO walks in the room, then I'm nervous and I don't want to talk to them. And in particular for sales managers and people, that's really important, because as your career goes up, you end up dealing with more senior people. So you've got to get over that. And so we used to do a lot of training about how do you deal with your social self-consciousness? Is it do you feel nervous when the boss comes into the room? All of that sort of stuff. And the thing that I learned very, very early in my career is that the more senior the person, the more lonely they are sometimes, because when you're in a team environment and you're around a whole lot of peers, they're your friends. But as you go up the career ladder, there's less people you can talk to about the things that you're frightened of or the things that you're scared of or your insecurities, because you've got to be the strong leader person. And so once I clicked that in my head, I totally lost my fear of walking up to the CEO of Macquarie Bank and introducing myself. They're just a person. They feel just like I do. It's fine.
It's just it's all in your head.
It's all in your head.
Mm. Yeah. Oh,
I've in 20 years, I've never had anybody say, get away from me. It's just people are generally good and people are generally nice. And that's what you think. You think, oh, I'm going to walk up to this person, they're going to tell me to bugger off. They never do. If you're coming with your heart in the right place and you're wanting to learn and all of that sort of stuff, it's no people are naturally nice. And they want to help others. That's the way we're built.
Oh, well, what do you think that like going back to saying, if you're going to pitch yourself, what would be your top tip if you can narrow it down to one for somebody? I mean, we've spoken about being accountable for your own development, but if they're looking to accelerate their career or maybe go for a new position that's higher, what's your top tip that you would give that person to be able to achieve that?
It's a good question, because there's about 10 things that I would say, which would be my top tip. I think having some structure and some time invested in your own self-development every week. So I think so many people go into the hamster wheel of just doing their job, and they're not looking forward and thinking, where do I want to be next? So in particular, I'm often sort of punching people to say, your profile's important, work on your profile, work on your networking, work on this, work on that. There's so many really great people in the property industry in particular in Brisbane that are so brilliant at their jobs and they're not known. And so people get headhunted because they've got a reputation and people know who they are. So investing in your profile is really important. Profile comes before profit in the dictionary. So I think even if it's just an hour a week where you spend some time on yourself, where am I now? Where do I need to be? What skills do I need to develop? Do I have an ABC list of contacts that I'm calling once a month, whatever it might be? And just setting that time aside to say, this hour is not for my job. This hour is for my own self-development. That'd be my top tip.
Actually blocking it out. Do it. And
don't negotiate. Something else has come up and it's more important. That is my time to do something for me.
Yeah.
It might be updating your LinkedIn profile. It might be asking for advice for someone who's in a higher position than you and what you should be working on yourself, whatever it might be.
Yeah, block it out.
Okay. Emily time. Emily hour. Having an Emily hour every week. That would be nice.
What is that, by the way, in your diary?
It's my Emily hour.
Oh, well, this might be a silly question to ask.
There's no silly questions. I guess, remember South Park, there are no stupid questions, there are only stupid people.
I guess as a recruiter and finding people for a role when you get asked, okay, we need to fill X position, how do you go about finding those people who might be good candidates for the job? Have you got a list of people who've already come to you, or do you go out?
Networking.
How do you,
networking is really important as well. So I think having people that I trust in the industry that I can ring and say, hey, I'm doing this role, is to manage a 15,000 metre square fit out. It's a $60 million project. It's really important. Who have you worked with in your career that you would recommend? And what happens is birds of a feather tend to flock together. So, for example, I know Janelle's a really high performer. If I was going to be looking for a lawyer for myself or anything, I wouldn't do it myself. I'd ring Janelle and ask. So, why wouldn't you tap into your networks of people who are experts in their fields and find out who they know and who they recommend? Because people won't put someone's name forward unless they actually think they're good. And that's where I get 90% of my candidates, to be honest. I actually had during the GFC, I had someone say to me quite aggressively at a function, are you just placing the people you know? And I was like, well, yeah, I am, because I know that person is a good performer. They've got a good reputation. I've checked them out. I've reference checked them. Like, yeah, that's totally what I do. I'm not ashamed of that.
Yeah. And on the flip side, if you're a candidate, then you have to get out to be seen. I guess.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and be good at your job. Doing what you say you're going to do when you say it is 90% of building a good personal brand. That's it. Say you're going to do something, do it. It's so simple, but so many people don't do that.
That's how we approach work with clients as well. Just do whatever it is you said you were going to do, and then
when you said you were going to do it
by, and then that's half the job done. Yeah. What's next for your career? Like, I'm interested in, you talk
That's such a good question.
You talk about, owning what your future is going to be. Is there things that you're still working towards, or, what's your vision for the legacy that you want to leave? And I know I've personally witnessed a lot of the impact that you're having, particularly on the property industry, and how you go above and beyond to get messages that really ring true for you and mean something to you out there in the world. Is there something that, you're holding that is important to you in the next phase of what your career is, and what's next?
Well, actually, this next 5 years is about balance for me. It's not a huge BHAG phase. It's not a big, hairy, audacious goal phase for my career. I've got two pretty small kids at the moment, so one's 6 and one's 4. I've got one in grade 1 and one in prep. And yeah. So I think the word for me for the next 5 years is going to be balance. It's about making sure that I can still do the work that I'm passionate about, still recruit executives, still learn, still give back. All of that stuff's really important, but it's more important for me that I'm not doing 12-hour days every day, and that I can pick up the kids from school and take them to Taekwondo and talk to them and be present for that period of time.
I think
and then
be present is the important thing. Like, I've got so much flexibility in my role, and I built it that way. That's one of the reasons why I created Helix, because I really think the infrastructure of law firms isn't set up for women's success. But even in having that, still being at the swimming carnival but answering emails the entire time that I'm there is not being present. So I think that that determination or that purposefulness to actually be present when your children are young is something that you really need to focus on, even if
I'm
you
not going to get the time back. You're not going to get the time back. And my mum said to me, which was I'm really grateful to, she said the primary school years are the most fun, and it's when they still want to be with you, and you're still the centre of the universe and all that sort of stuff. They become more independent as they get older. So it's really important to me for that next sort of 5 years that when I am at home, I'm not sitting at a computer going, at them. So I take a limited number of roles now. I only work on the things I really want to work on. I only work with the clients I really want to work for. And I make sure that I'm doing a really good job in delivering great outcomes for those smaller groups of clients. Prior to having kids, I might have 20 retained roles on at any given time. Now I don't have more than 5. So I can make sure that I can be present and do a really good job for my clients and not not be working the 12-hour days anymore.
That's the way of the future, really redefining what success is, because success can mean different things to you at different times of your life as well. So, you would consider yourself severely unsuccessful or not successful if you're making $1 gazillion every month, but you're not actually seeing your kids at all. Someone else is taking your kids to school and picking your kids up from school. But it just depends on you as an individual facing up to who it is that you are and what's important to you and owning what success looks like for you.
And that's why I think it's important to work as hard as possible in the early stages of your career to set yourself up for that component. I know there are a lot of people out there who don't have the luxury to do
we're both in privileged positions.
You're correct. You're the same. You own your own business, and so you can decide when you're going to work and when you're not, and be present for your children and so on. Not everyone's that way. There are a lot of people who their kids are in daycare 4 months after they had them, and that's fine. But I do take advice from, I quite like Jordan Peterson. I think he's got some really good advice. And I know, controversial. Not everyone likes him, but you take the good bits that speak to you and leave the other bits on the table. Yeah. He said you only have small kids once, so you don't get the time back, and you do have to be prepared to take an economic hit for that time frame if you want to be present, and that's what I'm choosing to do at this time.
Do you feel like the construction and property industry has been good for that, or are there any challenges? Making balance or in any other areas that you found?
The challenging thing about the construction property industry is it's really cyclical. So the GFC was a great example of that, where the 3 biggest industries hit were property, banking and recruitment, and I was 2 of those. I was a recruiter in the property industry. So you do have to, I've got a much broader desk now. I do a lot of work in property and construction, but I do a lot of other stuff as well now, lots of other industry sectors, lots of government and so on. So I'm a bit less risky than I would have been back in 2007, where I was exclusively a property recruiter. But there are times when it's an employer's market, and there are times when it's an employee market, and there are times when there's lots of jobs on, and there are times when there's not a lot of jobs on. So it is about finding a way to add value through both of those phases. I remember through the first sort of 6 months of the GFC, I was working at Davidson at the time, and I went to my boss, Bruce, and said, I want to do half a day a week of just helping people do resumes. It's not going to bring us any income, but this industry's been really good to me for the last 3 years, and now people are getting made redundant left, right and centre. I want to give back. And he said, go do that. So you've got to find a way to add value however you can. And there are a lot of those people that I worked with in that period who lost their jobs. I've placed 2 or 3 times since then. It's paid itself back.
Is there any advice that you've got, or any, anecdotal stories that you can tell us about what it was like to watch what happened with human resources in that period, and particularly where we're looking at going into a similar rough ride over the next few years? Any advice?
Don't be asking for too big of a salary right now. I think it's really important to not be greedy in an environment when you're about to start getting down. You need to make yourself indispensable. You need to make sure you're doing the over and above things. One of my favourite sentences is yes. Now, what was the question? If someone asks you, yes, sure, I'll do it. What was it again? What do you need help with? No problems. I'm the one who'll do that. And also making sure that your networks are strong, so that if you are one of those unlucky people who does get made redundant, that you're known for being a good person, and you can find another job quickly.
Is there any kind of life motto that you live by, or, you obviously read a lot of books and are really into personal development. Is there anything that kind of is that guiding voice that keeps you motivated or that has rung true for you throughout your career?
I think appetite for learning and hunger for learning is the thing that is most me.
Yeah.
I love learning from other people. I love learning from books. I love learning. I'm a sponge for information, and I think that's paid off well for me career-wise. And I've been so lucky. I've got to be around some amazing people. And if every relationship you go into, you think, what can I learn from this person? You get so much better, so much faster. You look at the things that you go, wow, that's amazing. Oh, that's not so great. One of the interview questions I like to ask people is, who's the best leader you've ever worked for and why? Because that tells me a lot about a person. And the stuff is usually consistent about why someone is a good leader or not. And then the same in reverse, who's the worst leader you work for? Well, I don't need to give me a name, but what didn't you like about the way that person led or managed you? And it's, being micromanaged, it's being someone taking credit for your work. Those things are consistent as well. So I think if you just take what you can learn from every conversation and apply it into your life, you get better a hell of a lot quicker.
Do you have any top interview, like best interview moment or answer, or maybe a biggest fail that sticks out in your head?
I can tell you my biggest fails. Yeah, there was. Okay, so one of the weirdest situations I was ever in was actually another recruiter had been been sacked actually, and they asked me to just do this person's interviews for the day. And one of the candidates in that interview consulted their spirit guide in the middle of the interview.
What is that?
I don't have.
Was it on a phone?
No, like this. Like went into like meditation mode and consulted their spirit guide before they could answer that. And I just sat there like, what is happening? Am I being punked? Yeah. What's going on? What is happening? It was really, really strange.
I've never heard of a spirit guide. That's why I was like,
I don't know what it is either.
Job?
I still don't know. I still don't know.
I guess they're always there.
I would love to. Actually, what would be hilarious book-wise would be like some of the hilarious things that have happened in interviews. I had one poor guy who was so nervous that he couldn't stop farting the entire interview, and the more he farted, the more nervous he got, and the more he was so awful. Eventually, I had to just say to him, "Do you want to go?" And he was like, "Please, can I leave?" And I was like, "Sure." And he was,
were they loud? Were they loud, or were they just silent but deadly?
Well, no, because he was holding onto his chair and clenching his butt cheeks together, so it was like they were coming out like horrible trumpet things. It was so terrible. It was so embarrassing for him and for me. Actually, that was terrible. Poor guy. I felt so sorry for him.
Maybe we can write a list of what not to do.
Yeah, that's a good one. Don't 10, do that.
Don't fart.
Yeah.
Ineke, if people want to learn more about what we've spoken about before and take your tip of being a sponge and accelerate their career, where are some resources? Go to the Path to Promotions website, but where are some other resources that they can access that you've created? Well,
we've got a YouTube channel which has a bunch of videos on it on how to perform in interviews. So that's the Path to Promotion. If you put in the Path to Promotion in YouTube, that should come up. And we've also got a really good employee guide that you can download for free on that channel, which is about how to get better at your job as quickly as possible. So I think that's a 30-page document or something. So you could download that, and hopefully that'll help you to have a plan of what to do better this week.
That's awesome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I've had a really good time.
Yeah, you've been super fun and super insightful to talk to. So I'm sure that we'll get thousands and thousands and thousands of views. Yeah, so, and thank you, Janelle, for being our special guest. Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed the podcast today. The information we discussed today was just that, information only. It is not specific advice. If you take action following something you heard today, it is important to make sure you get professional advice about your unique situation before you proceed, whether that advice be legal, financial, accounting, medical or other advice. Please reach out to the Helix team if you have any questions or if there's another topic you'd like to explore. And if you know someone who might benefit from the show, remember to tell them about it or point them to our Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn.